I'm not surprised that Ebola is coming back as strong as it has. I predicted a couple years ago if enough African Americans did not die from AIDS that they would bring Ebola here as well. Now, AIDS and Ebola share a common origin because they were both created by the United States Army's Biological Weapons Division in Fort Detrick, Maryland. And the documentation is there. There was a visiting virus that the United States government engineered to be a racially selective biological virus. From that came AIDS. In further research came Ebola. In further research came H1N1 swine flu, bird flu. I mean, they're constantly coming up with diseases to target select groups of people. President Jimmy Carter, former President Carter, in 1980 signed an executive order, Global 2000. The purpose of Global 2000 in 1980 was to reduce the population of African people in the world by 50%. From 1980 to 2000, in 20 years, black folk were supposed to be half the number. It did not work. It's no coincidence that that was signed in 1980. First documented, official documented cases of AIDS showed up in the 80s as well because it was all part of the Global 2000 campaign. Ebola was part of Global 2000 as well, but Ebola, being more aggressive than AIDS, was reserved for the African continent. AIDS was for the Western world. AIDS for the blacks in America, Ebola for the blacks in Africa. Okay? So Africa had to deal with AIDS and Ebola, okay, which has had an effect. But the problem is, black women keep on bringing forth new life in Africa. See, the white man, or should I say the United States government, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, they're trying to get control over the black population rate. I was reading the Newsweek the other day. Guess what they had listed as the #1 issue of 2015? Overpopulation, falsely arguing that there's not enough food to feed people. Well, we know that's not true because I did a research study on that in college that said there's enough food in the world produced to make everybody on earth obese. The problem is how they selectively use food to take care of some people and kill others. So the whole argument that we ain't got enough food to feed people is a lie. That is propaganda to do what? Influence black women to stop getting pregnant. President Obama, what's one of the things he did? When he became president, he reversed a federal ban that prohibited taxpayers' money from going to organizations in Africa that advocated for hysterectomy and abortion. Okay? It was made illegal under George W. Bush. Obama overturned it. And at present, yes, and he was never held accountable for this. At present, money can go to groups in Africa that advocate for extermination and hysterectomy and abortions for black women in Africa with America's federal tax dollar. Yes, it's all about exterminating black folk. Population control has always been a big issue for Europeans. Okay, how do we reduce the numbers of black folk so they don't ultimately outnumber us and ultimately exterminate us because black people are the possessors of the dominant gene? Racism. What is the primary reason we have white supremacy in the first place? To keep the black man from cohabitating with the white woman. Because the product of that union is a black child. Everything we touch becomes us. That makes us uniquely powerful, and it makes everyone else uniquely jealous. Anything the African touches produces an African child. So you have to contain us, #1, and then you have to influence us to stop reproducing. That's why they send in so many black women to college in Africa. This is a strategy that came from CFR. The research says that the more educated black women are, the less they're willing to have children. So the reason that you see this push for equal rights for African women isn't because they care about African women. It's because if we get her a job and if we get her into college, she's going to stop having babies and she'll be more likely to use birth control. Ebola is about birth control. And the interesting thing about AIDS and Ebola is they tell us what? They both came from monkeys in Central Africa. They want black people to actually believe that a monkey gave a black woman AIDS and a monkey gave a black woman Ebola, and that those black women brought that stuff over to America. And this is the official argument from the United States government right now that these two diseases came from Africa. In fact, Ebola is named after the Ebola River. It gets its name from Africa. They want us to believe that it came from us, as they like everything, want people to believe that everything came from Africa, as opposed to accepting that these diseases were man-made, white man-made, right here in the United States of America. What woman wants to marry or have children with a man that she perceives, quote unquote, to be a deadbeat? So, well, let's engineer the African American community and the African community, because this is the same issue going on in Canada. I was just in Europe. It's there. It's here. It's probably in Africa too. Okay, where we want the women to get a stronger and a better education than the men, and we want to equip the women with the better jobs. That's going to set up a natural imbalance in the black home, because in most human cultures, the woman to some extent is dependent on the man to some extent. Only amongst black folk is that totally in the reverse. The black woman doesn't have to get anything from the black man. Everything she needs, she can get directly from the white man in terms of job and education. So for a lot of black women, if they don't value culture, if they don't value family, if you're looking at the black man purely from a functional perspective and a practical perspective, what use is he? This is what a lot of black women say. I have my education, I got my job, what do I need him for? If you're reducing him to a paycheck, if you're reducing him to a means to an end, he has no relevance for you. It's only when you respect culture, when you respect family, when you respect the fact that he's a black man, whether he has a job or not, and that you cannot exist without him and he cannot exist without you, only then can you value what the black man brings to the table. But the European capitalist social order has influenced black women to reduce black men down to a commodity, a means to an end. What is he worth? Like slavery. Get up on a slave body. How much is he worth? Black women have been conditioned to do the same thing with black men. What is he worth? Not who is he? How can he help you? What does he bring to the table? What type of a father would he be? That's irrelevant. Reduce him down to a dollar sign. And that's why so many black men seem irrelevant and useless for black women, because the American racism has engineered a system where we don't get the jobs and we don't get the education, which makes her look elsewhere. And looking elsewhere can mean looking to someone of another race, or could mean looking to someone of the same gender. And that also, helps to explain the growth in lesbianism amongst black women. And also, black women have the fastest interracial dating percentage as well, because they're totally turned off of us. Look at the movies. It's being pushed in Hollywood. No Good Deed. Taraji P. Henson and Idris Elba. What was the movie about? A black man who breaks out of jail to go kill his white girlfriend for cheating on him. And then Taraji P. Henson is married to her black husband, who we find out at the end of the movie was cheating on her with the same white girl Idris Elba broke out of jail to go get. Look at Addicted, a movie about a black woman married to a good black man cheating on him with a white man. Look at Scandal, the whole Olivia Pope archetype. You see, look at all the commercials. If you notice, you don't see too many commercials now with a black man and a black woman together anymore. It's almost always biracial now. War has been declared on the black family as a population control strategy. We want to make black men not to trust black women, and we want black women to be totally disgusted with black men. To have an African family now is a revolutionary act, because it's almost a thing of the past. Self-hatred. And it's also eugenics. Because if I don't like what I look like in the mirror, the best way I can make myself, quote unquote, look better from a Eurocentric standpoint is to have a child with a European woman. My child might come out lighter, straight hair. He might look more like Barack Obama than me, which is more acceptable to white folk. It's self-hatred. The black man marries the white woman not because he's necessarily in love with the white woman. Okay, he's in love with what she represents. It's the culture, it's the power, and it gives him a sense of feeling equal with the white man. You see, it helps him deal with his insecurity complex. If I can marry the white woman, maybe I am as good as the white man.
Where is that insecurity? At what age do you think that insecurity is really coming from?
From birth. You got to remember, black men are the victims of psychological castration from the day we're born. Everything in society is programmed and engineered to give us one message: that you're nothing here and you never will be. You see, everything in society. Every institution is designed to reject and repulse the black male. Okay, I look at when I was working on my doctorate and how it took me 8 years to finish. How so many nights I just wanted to quit, but I couldn't, because I said if I quit, I'll never be able to give another speech at another high school graduation telling these folk not to let nobody break you down if I let them break me down. That's the only thing that kept me going. Our children. Okay, because I didn't want to be a hypocrite to our children. Other than that, I would have quit. The racism, the differential treatment. I mean, And this is in 2012, so I understand why a lot of black men quit. Because why put up with that? This is why they drop out of school. Why do I have to put up with being degraded in order to get my high school diploma? You see, and so this is why our brothers just quit. They just hang out on the corner, smoke weed, not because I want this loser life, but when I try to make something of myself, I'm constantly having to fight. And you know what it triggers? It triggers depression. And what is the outgrowth of depression taken too far? Suicide. Black men have the fastest growing suicide rate in America, and nobody talking about it. When they shoot somebody, it's all over the news. You notice that? They never miss an opportunity to cover a homicide. Why do they never cover suicide? All the black men killing themselves in New York? Nobody's talking. No, why isn't that on the news? Because when a black man takes his own life, that benefits the system. But when a black man takes another person's life, that benefits the system too. But the gun is considered a threat to the American social order, because if he's armed, he can hurt us as well. So that becomes an issue. But if he's only going to take his own life, we're going to applaud that. You don't hear nothing about black suicide because it's convenient to ignore it. Black men, they suffer. Black women too. One of the biggest issues with black women now, nervous breakdown. Black women are having nervous breakdowns like crazy because they don't know when to take a break. And one of the strategies of racism has been to teach the black woman that she's almost like a man herself, that she has to be strong all the time. She can never be vulnerable. She can never be weak. And a lot of black women have bought into this with the quote-unquote strong black women thing that they've taken too far. And so now you have black women who are masculinizing themselves, almost conducting themselves like men because they feel that they have to be stronger than black men. It's not just having more education. It's not just having a better job. I literally have to be stronger than him, you see. And so black women have been stripped of their femininity. They're the only women who are not allowed to be feminine. If you notice, black women must always be tough and hard and militaristic. You can't be feminine. White women can. Asian women can. Latino women can. Arab women can. But if you appear too feminine, they will call you a weak black woman. We have allowed society to strip our black women of their femininity. Same thing what they'll do with the male. Angry black man, angry black woman. First of all, let's look at it from a psychological perspective. If you live in an aggressively racist society and you're not angry, I think that would be indicative of mental illness. For you to be a victim of oppression and to not be angry about it, something must be wrong with you. You see, that's like being physically, sexually, or emotionally abused and it doesn't bother you. That's illness right there. How could you be so numb to your own mistreatment? So for black people to be angry at what's happening to us, I think it's healthy. But I think it can be unhealthy if we don't find appropriate channels to release that anger. Because what happens is we keep it in and it builds and it builds. And the next thing you know, you're blowing somebody's head off. A lot of these homicides, we call them senseless killings, right? You know why they're so senseless? Because they are nothing more than reactions to pent-up frustration born of white racism. We're not allowed to tell white folks that we don't like them. It could cost you your life. We're not allowed to tell white boss that you're a racist and you need to treat me better. It'll cost. Being honest with white people can destroy your life, literally. So that means what? How do we let off all of this anger? On the only people who you're allowed to get away with doing it to. Other black people. And that's why the black community is a powder keg, because you have all these psychologically unhealthy Africans who don't have no healthy way of releasing their energy, and they release it on each other. That's why the black on black homicide rate is going through the roof. If you don't understand racism, you'll never understand black on black violence. The black man kills the black man because he ain't allowed to kill the white man.
What about the domestic violence?
Same thing. Black women suffer one of the highest rates of domestic violence in America. Why? Because the black man suffers the most oppression in America. He ain't got no healthy channel to release that pent-up frustration. He comes home, and guess who he takes it out on? The only person who has his back unconditionally, his woman. How ironic is that? And his children. How ironic is that? That's why black children are more likely to be victimized by, physical abuse. Daddy comes home, he's being mistreated at the job, he's mad, he's angry. He loved me, but he hurt so much This energy, this negative energy, it got to come out. And he takes it out by being excessive with the punishments against his children. Racism is the cause, but we have to come up with healthy outlets. My black college tour that I'm going to be doing, I'm doing that to give black boys a healthy outlet. I'm going to do some retreats with young black men too, because they need to express themselves. I was down in South Carolina a couple of weeks ago where I was speaking at one of the universities. Brother came up to me. He sat down. He said, listen, man, I know that you're not a big supporter of my lifestyle, but I'm a homosexual and I need somebody I could talk to, and I think I could talk to you. Would you mind if I give you a call? He said, listen, man, I was molested when I was a kid. I didn't contemplate suicide. I ain't got nobody in my family to talk to. They religious. Dr. Umar, will you talk to me? And I said, you call me. He said, you sure you don't mind? Because I understand. I said, listen, I might not agree with what you do, but you still my brother. And before you do anything to hurt yourself, you call me up and you talk to me. I don't care what time of the night it is. If I can help you, I'm going to help you. Our people hurt. Our people hurt. Like, a mother will call me about their son. They want to put my child in special ed. Dr. Umar, can you help me stop this? And the next thing you know, the conversation that went from saving the son to all she's dealing with. I ain't got nobody. My mom just died. You know, I'm living off of public assistance checks. I could barely keep the lights on. You know, my kid's father, I just found out, you know, he cheating on me with somebody else. You know, I was a victim of sexual molestation by my uncle when I was little. I mean, just so much. And when I get people, this is why sometimes I don't like to pick up my phone. Not because I don't want to help people, but I know that once I start talking to her about her child, it's going to come to her. And I ain't got enough hours in a day to help everybody process, you know, their issues. But our people are hurting and they don't have nowhere to go to get the type of support. Like, I wish I had time to do nothing but therapy. If I could, because that's my heart, I would do nothing but therapy all day long. But I'm needed in so many other places, you know. And I think that's why church is so popular in some regards and so unpopular in others. On the one hand, it is a crutch for psychologically unhealthy black folk. Church is their booster shot for the week. Okay? It's like somebody on drugs. I got to get my hit once a week. An alcoholic. I got to get my bottles in to keep going. Functional alcoholics. You see? The church is that drug for a lot of black folk. And then for a lot of other black folk, they're not even going to bother with the church because the church don't do nothing but do what? Cater to your emotional dependencies. People, but we don't like to admit it to each other. And because there's not a lot of money in healing black folk, there's not a lot of people taking up the charge of trying to help us heal. You see, they rather put you on drugs because drugs is money. Send you to the therapist. They can't help us. We're spiritual. If you want to deal with black folk, you have to deal with our ancestors. You're going to have to deal with our spirit. You got to deal with the whole black. You just can't give us a whole bunch of mind talk, you know, verbal therapy. It's not going to work with black folk. You got to be holistic. And if you don't do nothing about racism, it's going to be hard to help black folk anyway, because that's the number one cause of all of our mental illness. Depression, anxiety, drug addiction, marijuana addiction, low self-esteem, white supremacy. It's the trigger for it all. I think the music, the popular music, because we do have good, wholesome, progressive black music, but the popular music, I believe, has brainwashed the entire black community into thinking and acting and feeling in ways that are conducive to the extermination campaign. Look at gangster rap. Gangster rap glorifies every aspect of reactionary black male masculinity that is needed for you to be killed by police, that is needed for your community to become dysfunctional, and that is needed for you to go to jail. It glorifies uncontrolled sex, selling drugs, killing other black men, disrespecting black men. Look at the most popular messages in gangster rap, and it is all aimed at destroying the black community. So and I always say that if you really want to know the state of a people, conscious, look at the state of their music. Music always reflects where we are. Remember, they only rap what we listen to. Why is gangster rap so popular? Why is the killing and the selling of drugs and the smoking of weed and the uncontrolled misogyny of women, why is that so popular? Because that's where black folk at. In the 60s, our music was more revolutionary. Even in the 80s, when we had the conscious rap music, we was a little bit more progressive. The X movement came back. Everybody wanted to study Malcolm X. The X had, look where we at now. It's gangsta this, gangsta that. My drugs, my gun, my this, my that. And it's popular, and even elders listen to it. I remember when Snoop Dogg first album came out, Doggy Style. The cover, a woman, half dog, half woman, rectum in the air. I saw elders dancing to that music. Church-going elders was dancing to Snoop Dogg. Snoop Doggy. You see? So we got to recognize how we support attacks on culture that are conducive for the exact same things that America needs us to do in order to continue exterminating and removing us from the society. If it was up to me, there would be no gangster rap. Get rid of it. It's not helping us. It is the commercial that sells to black folk everything they need to do to destroy themselves. Remember, for every product, you got a marketing scheme. They sell some sneakers, Air Jordan. They want to sell some hair, they got somebody. They want to sell a car, you want to sell prison, you do it through gangster rap. My answer is going to be very biased because I'm a Pan-African nationalist. I'm a Garveyite. And fundamental to my thinking is that the condition of African people everywhere is contingent upon the condition of African people on the continent. Central to Pan-African thought is that a people cannot do any better than the people in their international homeland are doing. As Africa goes, so goes every African in the world. And that's why, for me, Pan-Africanism is the only strategy that will work. Nothing else will work because everything else, if you look at every other ideology that we have, it separates us from Africa. Every one. Only Pan-Africanism connects us to Africa. And this is another contradiction of our struggle. Let me ask you a question. We've seen Trayvon murdered. We've seen Eric Garner, the young brother in Cleveland, Michael Brown. Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of black men murdered every day. I think I read something like a black man is killed by the police in America, once every 3 days or something to that extent. Why you never see Chinese kids get murdered by police? They have just as many gangs as we have. Chinese gangs all across America. Latino gangs all across America. Asian gangs all across America. Why is it only black men being murdered by cops? Because those are the only killings they will get away with. You kill Chinese people, you got to deal with China. They're not going to go for that. If the Chinese notice that there's a systematic war against their youth in America, someone's picking up a phone call. Obama, we need to have a conversation. Because me and you, we engaged in some trade. Our countries do business. Well, that business is at risk right now because the next time one of mine get killed, we cutting this off. You see that? Even during the war on terror, how many Arab teens were murdered by cops? Almost none. Because they have countries to look out for their best interests. Black folk globally don't have countries in Africa to look out for our best interests, even if they want, because they're not in the economic political position to lend us that leverage. And until we build them up to look out for us, there will be no future for black people outside of Africa. Yes, partly. They wanted to float an African currency that was going to be based off the resources of Africa. So now you're talking about an African dollar, if you would, based off African resources. The richest continent on earth has its own currency. Do you know what that does to every other currency in the world? That was revolution overnight. It would have devalued everything. The pound, the dollar, the euro, it would have been over. They couldn't let that happen. You turn white supremacy upside down. And that's why they murdered Gaddafi in such the gruesome way that they did. I heard he was sodomized and all this other stuff. They had to do what? Gaddafi, the way in which they murdered Gaddafi wasn't for Gaddafi. Remember, all behavior is a function of the consequence. They were conditioning the sub-Saharan African heads of state that if you ever try this again, this is the exact same thing that will happen to you. Africa belongs to the white man. And if any of you Negroes think you're going to stop that anytime soon, you will end up just like Gaddafi. And the example was so powerful. Why? Because Gaddafi arguably, other than South Africa, had the strongest economy on the continent. Economically, Libya was well off, you understand? So if they can do that to a man with a standing army, imagine what they could do to me. I'm little old Senegal. I'm Ghana. Imagine what they could do to me. I'm Somalia. You see? So the fear of the example of Gaddafi's murder, I don't know if any of the African heads of state right now got the courage that would be necessary to bring about that economic revolution.
But Mugabe is trying to do something like that.
Yes. I think, though, the issue in that case, here's the thing with Africa. It's just like black folks. You got 55 countries, right? Give or take a few. Let's say those 55 people. They all got the same enemy, white supremacy. But they're all scared of that same enemy. In order to fight white supremacy, they got to do it together. It can't be 5, and then the other 50 still running with the white man. You follow what I'm saying? It got to be a total unified United States of Africa, but they're scared.